So all season, I've been looking for an episode to wow me. One last chance. Will the Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos do the job? Welcome back to my Doctor Who reviews. Today we're going to be talking about the Season 11 season finale, The Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos. I'm going to talk about the things which I liked, the stuff that didn't quite land for me, and we'll start with my overall impression of the episode. So my overall impression of the episode was... It was a bit weird, to be honest. I found yet again, with an episode by Chris Chibnall, we have a story which in other hands might have been good. But there is so much missed potential in this episode, so much missing threat in this episode, that for a season finale it really was quite lackluster. Now, let me say, it continues to look magnificent. If we were rating this season of Doctor Who and this episode of Doctor Who purely on the aesthetics, then it would have to rate really highly. The quarry has never looked as good as this to the traditional Doctor Who venue, but it hasn't. It looked great, and the cinematic quality, the direction of some of the shots, all of it really effective. But it always comes back to the writing, and that is where Series 11 has really let us down. And this episode is really no exception. But I'll get back to the things which didn't land for me. Let me talk about a few of the things which did work. And for the most part, that was the performances of Bradley Walsh and Mark Addy. I have some problems with the Graham story, which we'll kind of circle back around to. But in the build-up to the moment, when he faces off against the surprise villain that surprised nobody, Tim Shaw, I thought his taking the Doctor aside for a moment to just say, look, this is what I'm doing. I know you won't approve, but I need to be honest with you. And I thought that was really effective. I thought his quiet determination, his discussion with Ryan as to why he felt he needed to do this for Grace, I think all of that was extremely effective and very well played by Bradley Walsh. And I thought Mark Addy as Paritka, I've forgotten his character name. Mark Addy did amazingly with a very slight role. I don't think there was very much to his character, but every time he said something, you really got the impression that he kind of meant it, even to the point of, telling Ryan to get away from the camera so that he could take the video call at the start. There was a quiet, firm authority. You could really believe that he was the commander of a spacecraft on a mission, a military mission for rescue. I also really liked the performance by Tim Shaw. The actor, I'm afraid I've never got around to looking up his name, but I thought up until a point, and we'll get back to that as well, I thought he had quite a lot of menace in this episode. He was quite, I'm not sure scary is the word, but certainly intimidating. And I quite liked that. Look, I didn't start doing these reviews on YouTube so I could become a ranty YouTuber. That's not what I want to do. This episode really does drive me towards it, though. I really could spend a lot of time picking apart every line which didn't work for me. I could spend a lot of time talking about every design choice, which makes no sense, but I'm not going to do that. I have one main point about why this episode doesn't work, which I will rant a bit about. But I'm not going to pick at all the details, except one. I just kind of have to mention this. And that is the Ucks. The Ucks are awful. The performances are dreadful, particularly Delph. I'm sorry. I'm sure he was very excited to get his big break in Doctor Who, but he was just bad. Every line he delivered was so flat. But actually, that's not what I was going to rant about either. The thing that I was going to rant about for the Ucks, is the mathematics of how there can only be 2 of them that are only found on 3 planets. Does that mean there are 6 of them? 2 on each of the 3? Or do they move around between 3 planets quite a bit? Or is it somehow possible that there's 2/3 of an Ux on each of these planets at all times? I mean, inquiring minds need to know. And when one Ux does eventually die, how does that work? Is a new Ux reborn out of the ashes like a phoenix? Or do the 2 Ux reproduce at some point and create a new Ux, and as soon as that Ux is brought into the world, a parent Ux has to die because there can only be 2? I worry about these things because I'm a very strange person. But it really doesn't work. It really doesn't. No, but the thing that I want to rant about, the thing that I do genuinely want to spend just a moment saying what really bugged me about this episode is the way it deals with threat. At the end of the season, I was really hoping we would get a big, blowout, exciting, edge of your seat thrill ride where the Doctor and the companions were in danger. And so many times that almost worked this time. Except that Chibnall can't seem to write that kind of episode. And instead, everything that is introduced, which might represent a threat, which might put our characters into peril, is either so unrelatable as to be meaningless, or so immediately undercut that there's no sense of threat from it at all. Let me just enumerate a few of the things which are represented as threats in this episode and how they are dealt with. We have a planet which is generating psychic waves which will drive you mad. Oh no! But I've got a thing that'll fix them. Straight away. Not only is that an abstract threat, but it's undercut as soon as it's talked about. But later in the episode, we have to take off our things. And that gives us a headache until we put them back on again. All of that line of plot, completely meaningless, completely unnecessary, only there, as far as I can work out, to give the Doctor to have a reason to have a mental blocker thing to use on the Ux. Oh no, these strange wibbly things in the fiberglass melted together polyhedron shaped things. They're actually planets, and they've decided now would be a good time to become planets again, and oh no, we fixed it. Tim Shaw is blowing up the Earth. It's a red laser beam that's striking the Earth, and that's presumably bad in some way that we never really see because we get no reaction shots from people on Earth. It is just a CGI ball being shot by a CGI beam, and we just don't relate to it. Tim Shaw himself actually, as I say, really enjoyed his performance right up until the point when he breaks himself out of the thing which is keeping him alive, presumably, and goes chasing off after Graham, of all people. Okay, Graham and Ryan are breaking people out of his trophy room. But surely he's got bigger fish to fry than that. And then when they meet, they stare at each other long enough for Graham to decide not to shoot Tim. It's only then that Tim decides to be a threat, because we still actually need Graham to shoot him. Okay, only in the foot, and oh look, it's okay, the doctor will be livid, don't tell her. We play it off for comedy. Tim Shaw has killer robots. I'm doing this all out of weird order. Tim Shaw has killer robots. Oh no! Let's just duck and have them shoot each other. Everything's set up as a threat, immediately undercut. And that is not good TV. That is not a good, exciting episode of Doctor Who. I realise I haven't spoken about the Doctor or Yaz in this review, and I probably should just say a word or two about them. Except I have nothing to say, not about Yaz anyway. She was just there. Do you know, I think actually this has happened quite a bit during this season. Yaz's role in the team seems to be to have someone for the Doctor to talk to while Ryan and Graham are off having their B-plot. And that happened again today. There was nothing from Yaz, really, other than having a person for the Doctor to talk to when the Doctor needed somebody to talk to. And as for the Doctor, she was a bit of a mixed bag this time. She told people in the room how clever she was twice in this episode. I can kind of forgive once as a throwaway line, or once if it's done really well, but in both occasions it's an aside in the middle of some other breathless rant, and it just doesn't... If someone is telling you how smart they are, they're generally not that smart. So every time the Doctor says it, it just brings her down in my estimation, just a little. There were some bits from Jodie this time which I thought were great. I loved her farewell speech, for example, as she's going back into the TARDIS. I thought it was really good. I liked her confrontation with Tim Shaw. I loved her line when he told her they'd been there for 3,407 years, and she says those 7 years must have really dragged. But there was just too much of that breathless, excitable puppy dog performing as well, and just it sets my teeth on edge every time she does it. By the way, I'm not ranting about this, but let me just say 3,407 years is a strange amount of time. Given what we know that Tim has done with his 3,407 years, seems to be to steal 5 planets. And by the looks of what we see him doing to Earth, that seems to take about 10 minutes to achieve. So that's an hour of activity dealt with. Presumably the battle took a little bit more time as well. I'm happy to believe that what we see there about the ships and the stealing of the planets took about a year of his life. I don't get any sense that he did anything with the other 3,406 years that he was on this planet. I'm ranting. I do apologise. One glorious moment, one moment which genuinely raised the spirits during this episode to finish on, because I really don't want to finish on a negative. I loved the fist bump between Graham and Ryan. I know that they've been telegraphing this would be a moment for the entire season, and yet still when the moment came, it was delightful. And just the kind of look of surprise on Graham's face when he gets the bump, and neither of them really knowing what to do next. I wasn't sure if that was about what to do with Tim or what to do now the fist bump has happened. It works on 2 levels. I quite enjoyed both of them. So yes, there are highlights in this episode. There are things which I enjoyed, despite all the rants that I've just done. And you know what? I think that'll do us for this week. Next week I will be back to do the somewhat inevitable overview of Series 11. And I'll talk about some of the themes I spotted, some of the things, some of the recurring ideas which worked, and of course, some of the recurring ideas which didn't work throughout the series. I hope you enjoyed my review today. I hope you enjoyed this episode today, because I really do hope that people generally enjoy Doctor Who. That is the aim. And if you found stuff from this episode which you really liked, throw it into the comments. I'd love to read it. But otherwise, that'll do me today. If you want to see more from me about Doctor Who, there is a box here. If you want to see more about my writing, there is a box over there. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers.